So good evening. Welcome to Urban Dharma's weekly Open Sangha program. As I'm sure all of you know, right now, most of us, I would say probably all of us who is watching this, probably in some form or another of social distancing uh, due to the pandemic that is the COVID-19. And so likewise, Urban Dharma is not meeting in person anymore until the situation changes. And so we will be live streaming every Thursday for Open Sangha. And there are other programs that we will be live streaming as well. So stay in touch, make sure you like the page Urban Dharma North Carolina, and that way our feed will turn up on your feed more easily. So anyway, the Open Sangha program, basically when we used to meet at the temple in downtown Asheville, it used to consist of three parts, which is we begin with half an hour of guided meditation, followed by a 10-15 minute break where we all go into the kitchen area and make ourselves a mug of tea. Usually there is some refreshments to share, some cookies or some fruits or nuts or dried fruits or anything like that, and to catch up with each other, to talk to each other, chit-chat a little bit for about 10-15 minutes, and then the final 45 minutes we would then focus on some reading or some topic, and whenever I'm in town, I tend to anchor these Thursday night meetings. So if you're in the area, I look forward to us being able to gather again at the temple, and I look forward to seeing some of you when we can gather back again. Meanwhile, in this format of live streaming completely, where there isn't people gathered around me, things are slightly, I have to admit, kind of awkward. Because then I'm talking to my phone, which I've set up there staring at me, and so it still takes a little bit of getting used to. But anyway, here we are, all of us facing different types of getting used to. So this word, getting used to, taking a little bit of effort to get used to. Getting used to is actually one of the most important definitions for how Buddhists, how the Buddha would explain what meditation is. So meditation, one important definition of meditation is getting used to get familiar with, or we could also say habituate. So it's important for us to understand this particular definition of meditation. There's another also very interesting definition of meditation, which connects meditation with the notion of cultivation, as in the way that a farmer would cultivate the crops. The way a farmer, a gardener would cultivate these plants. So both this notion of cultivating as an agricultural metaphor, as well as this definition of getting used to, is essentially how the Buddha conceived of and how the Buddha talked about meditation. So we will be learning more about this. And as announced in our mailing list, today's meeting, today's Open Sangha, I want to introduce to us, to all of us, to share with all of you this particular tradition, that is found within Tibetan Buddhism that is called Lojong. Lojong. But first, we shall meditate together, and there are different instructions given for different types of meditation, even within just the context of Buddhism. So tonight, what I want to share with you is essentially the specific meditation instructions given in the Lojong tradition. So there are some interesting differences, whether it's taken from the Lojong tradition or taken from the more Vajrayana deity yoga tradition, or more the Mahamudra tradition or Dzogchen tradition, if you're familiar with some of these categories that are found within Tibetan Buddhism, or in the Lamrim tradition. So there are interesting differences, and I think sometimes these days these differences are kind of lost, and everything kind of gets sort of sometimes even repackaged into something little nondescript. But what I'm going to do tonight actually is to draw almost exclusively from the instructions given in the Lojong tradition on how to begin meditation. Where do we start when we want to meditate? So this might also be a good introduction for some of you if you have been thinking, maybe it's time to learn how to meditate. So first of all, there are many different traditions of meditation. Just even within Buddhism, there are so many different traditions of meditation. And each of them, if you pursue them, each of them has its own power, has its own abilities, has its own uniqueness. So sometimes this is a matter of figuring out, which of these methods work especially well for you, or at least for you for a while, because as we over time, we change, and hopefully we evolve, hopefully we mature, then we look for something else that is more appropriate. So just know that there are lots of different types of meditations, even within the Buddhist tradition. Then beyond the Buddhist tradition, there's even more meditation traditions. So the best approach is, as the Buddha himself would say, come and see, come and investigate, come and test it out. Test it out with your own experience. Yes, do a little bit of kind of thinking about it, but also understand that when it comes to meditation, thinking can only get us so far. And in fact, when it comes to meditation, thinking itself is certainly not enough. But we can begin by thinking and considering, but more importantly, we have to experience it. And so next, we are going to spend about 25 minutes in this guided meditation that, as I said, that I will be drawing mostly from the Lojong tradition. Mostly it's about 90%, at least 90% I'll be drawing from the Lojong tradition. So let's begin. Allow yourself to sit comfortably, whether it's in the more traditional sitting on the floor or sitting cross-legged on the floor or on a chair like I am seated, or on the ground, or even just sitting on a regular chair, sitting in a regular way. The key thing about physical posture for meditation is to make sure of two most important key points. One, sit in a way that is balanced and stable. Balance meaning you're not putting weight or stress in one side of your body or the other side, but you're sitting in a way that is balanced with your weight equally distributed and seated in a way that is stable. So that's the first point. So to achieve the first point, when you're seated, you might actually want to, at the beginning, just kind of move around a little bit. Sway your body a little. Just very slowly, very subtly. Sway your body a little. And then almost imagine your body to be like a pendulum that is swaying. And just as a pendulum that is swaying, when left to itself, eventually it will find its still point, its point of stillness, and it will come to rest. In that same way, let your body come to rest. The second point, aside from the first point, which is about stability, about balance, the second point is upright. And you want to make sure that you're seated upright. For that, you can try elongating your spine. So kind of pull your body upwards, and then let it settle down and relax. Then again, pull your torso upwards gently and hold it in tension a little. Give it a little bit of tension, hold it upwards, and then release and relax and just settle. And in this way, let your body find the most optimal position, the most natural and optimal, so that the mind can come to rest, and come to rest with a brightness and a brilliance that does not lead to drowsiness. So at the beginning, just allow your body to arrive at this optimal position. Do it with patience, with care and kindness for your own body. Be good to it in the same way that a gardener or a farmer would tend to his or her garden. With patience, with care, and with consistency. Let your awareness pervade your entire body, and let your awareness be present right where your body is. Imagine your body and mind glowing. Imagine your body and your awareness of your body glowing, glowing like a ball of light in the dark of the night. But both awareness and body are radiant. And just relax. If an important thought comes up that tells you, oh, you need to plan this, oh, you need to think of that, oh, you need to do this, oh, you need to do that, simply say to these thoughts later, firm but kind, kindly but firmly, just say to these thoughts, say to these distractions later. And then go back to feeling the radiance of both body and awareness. Give yourself permission to enjoy the radiance of your body, the brightness of your body, the glow of your body, and the radiance of your awareness, or of your heart-mind. Body relaxed, mind radiant and present. There is no better moment than this moment. There is no other paradise or Pure Land but this very spot that you're seated at, right here, right in this moment, is the best moment. And so stay with this moment, stay on this spot, and allow yourself to simply enjoy this moment. Let body and mind come to rest. Let body and mind be at ease. Let body and mind simply rest. at your own pace, when you are ready, you want to turn your attention to your breath. Turn your attention to the process of breathing. More specifically from the Lojong tradition, we are taught to count our breaths, and counting our breath from 1 to 21. This is the special instructions found in the Lojong tradition, that we should train our focus. Let the mind gather inwards, because when the mind gathers inwards, then you can experience the bliss that arises when the mind is no longer distracted. You begin to see the richness of this mind, this heart mind. And we'll begin to develop the ability to see and to be able to differentiate between the mind itself and the activities of the mind. Or you could say the heart and the activities of the heart. Right now, the activities of the heart are pulling us in all directions, so that we become enslaved to the activities of the heart. And we have lost sight of the Master, which is the heart itself. So by developing focus, by withdrawing the mind from external stimuli, from distractions of all kinds, we can begin to experience directly the mind itself. And when that experience begins to happen, we will see the incredible qualities of this mind, this heart. And in that way, begin to develop some freedom from being dragged around by the activities of the heart, by the activities of the monkey mind. The activities of the heart and activities of the monkey mind exhausts us. So by training and developing the ability to gather our mind, to withdraw from being dragged around, then we begin to experience the ease and the bliss that arises when the mind gathers together inwards. To do that, the Lojong tradition says, count your breath, count it to 21. So do the cycles of 21. So at your own pace, you can do this. When you're ready, start counting. When you inhale and exhale, that is 1. And inhale, exhale, 2, all the way to 21 is how the instructions have it. A couple of points to pay attention to here. Be sure that you are not using the counting to direct your breath, but rather the counting is following the breath, rather than the breath is following your counting. In other words, don't let the counting artificially control your breath, but rather it is because you're observing each breath as it arises and ceases, and then you count 1. And then again you're observing the next breath arising and ceasing, and you count 2. I personally have found it useful, especially as beginners, that instead of counting all the way from 1 to 21, that you can count each breath as you inhale and exhale, and divide the 21 into 3 sets of 7, so that you begin, as you observe yourself inhaling, you mentally say 1, and as you exhale, you again say 1. Then the next inhalation you say 1, but the exhalation you say 2. Then 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, and 1, 7. The next you say 2, and then when you're inhaling, and then 1 as you're exhaling, and then 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, all the way to 2, 7, and then 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, all the way to 3, 7. And in that way you complete one cycle of 21. And then you start again. It doesn't have to be continuous. You might do one cycle of 21 divided into 3 sevens, and then relax a little before you start counting again. And so at your own pace, when you're ready, please try this method. Remembering that it's not your counting that is directing your breath, but the counting is arising while observing the arising and ceasing of each breath. instructions also say, if in the midst of counting you lose the count, then start again. So if you're dividing the 21 into 3 sets, you don't have to go back to set number 1. Whichever set you're in the midst of when you lose count, begin with that set. So if you're in the 3rd set, you go 3, 1, 3, 2, and then you lose count because you have become distracted. And when you recognize that you have become distracted, then start from 3. Again, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, all the way to 7. So that was a very brief session uh, based on the instructions given in the Lojong tradition. So we're going to take a break now, and during this time, if you have any questions regarding the instructions that I just shared with you regarding this very basic form of meditation that is anchored on counting our breath up to 21. So regarding this particular technique, if you have any questions or if you have anything to share, please go ahead and write now on the comments. But we'll take about a 10-minute break. And so this is a good way to also for you to type these questions, because there's a lag time between you typing it and me seeing it. And so during this 10-minute break that we're going to take, go ahead and type the questions, and then when we start back up, I'm going to answer those questions, or read out if it's not questions, if there's something that you just want to share, I will also read that out. So now is a good time to do that. And if you want, it's good to get up, to kind of walk a little bit before you come back and sit down again. If you don't have any questions to ask or any comments to make, now is a good time to go stretch a little, get something to drink. Okay, so we are back. So let's see if there are any questions or comments. Mhm. So as far as I can see, there's one question, which is what is the best way to counter sleepiness during the counting of the breath? Yeah, that's a good question. Um, well, um, first of all, I think, especially as beginners, and I count myself among that group, beginners. First thing, I think it's wise to choose a time to do this meditation, a time that you know is most optimal for you to be alert and awake. Because we have to take into consideration the limitations of our bodies. So if you try to do this right after having a very tiring day, mentally tiring especially, then your body will want to kind of shut down. Then it becomes harder. It becomes such a challenge to stay awake. So you want to find a time where your body is not exhausted because your mind is exhausted, or because the body is exhausted. So that's one thing. So find an optimal time. Some of us are morning people, some of us are night people, then perhaps there are even some of us who are afternoon people. So find the optimal time. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, I think we have to kind of like, when we start a particular session of meditation, we have to kind of say to ourselves, like, okay, for the next 10 minutes, it's crucially important that I remain alert. You have to make some kind of determination at the beginning. I remember about a year ago, in the early fall, I had a couple of friends to come help me to clear the gutters in my house. After late fall, rather, when all the leaves, there's a big oak tree, not mine actually, my neighbors, but then all the leaves, come down onto my roof, and then they clog up the gutters. And so I got two friends to help, very kind, because I kind of don't like getting up on ladders. I kind of don't like heights. And my roof is really tall. And so they brought, this 16-foot ladder, and they got up there. One of them got up first, and the second one got up. And then there's a second part, a higher roof. And so they had to get the ladder pulled up to go to the next one. Then once they're up on the next one, it was like strong winds or something, I don't remember exactly. The whole ladder flew off. So now I'm the only one left on the ground. And the only way they're going to be able to get down from the second roof is if I go retrieve the ladder and put it, in position so that I climb up to the first roof, and then, bring the ladder up and give it to them the two of them who is stuck on the second roof. And so I remember, so as I was getting up, the ladder, climbing it, I had this, like, you could say like adrenaline, right? Because I was like, I need to focus. and not, let my fear of climbing heights get in the way, because I need to go rescue these kind friends, so to say. It's like I really need to focus, and I was completely alive. So, that sort of gave me some. I thought, oh, this is a good example to use. Like when we start each session that we're trying to meditate, a time to like cultivate the natural. This is actually natural. It's natural abilities that we have innately, but we have lost touch with. So now we need to get used to. We need to familiarize. So first of all, we need to trust that actually this is not something new that we're trying to learn, but rather we are trying to remember how to be the master again, and not to be the slaves, so to say, to our thoughts, to our emotions. So we say, now I need to, in the next 10 minutes, or in the next 20 minutes, or in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to remain alert. And that helps a lot, so that when you're counting, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, it's very clean, it's very clear. The other thing is that as you're counting, you might feel like a sense of like serenity or peacefulness kind of descending, and sometimes that can kind of be turned into something tricky, because we feel so at ease, so relaxed, right? Then we let our guard down, and then we doze off. So that's another thing. Then the other point is, try not to close your eyes if drowsiness is an issue. Try to let your eyes remain open, but downcast, so that you're not closing your eyes. I think because we have a habit, like normally, if we're not very experienced with meditating, normally when we close our eyes, right, either we are trying to fall asleep, or we're trying to think really hard. And both of those are not what we're doing when we're meditating. So it might help, if we don't close our eyes. And so you have to, you should experiment with it and see what works for you. Yeah. Let's see if there are other questions. I'll give a chance for any follow-up, any response to what I just said. It's a little hard to make this interactive on Facebook live stream, but this live stream can reach more people, I think, so we're going to use this format. And then the lag time also makes it a little bit kind of challenging. But all of this, from the Lojong tradition, we say all these challenges, limitations, even the technological challenges and limitations, can and should be used as raw material for practicing Lojong. Okay, I'm going to assume that there are no questions, but so as I'm talking, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them up and in the comments, and then when I take a pause or look down and I see, and I will try to answer your questions. If you have attended some programs that I've done in person, you'll know that I actually enjoy people just, within reason, I enjoy people interrupting or kind of pausing me and say, hey, what you just say, can you repeat that? You know, I actually welcome and enjoy that. But again, this particular format makes it kind of hard to do it. So anyway, so Lojong, okay? So Lojong, it's this word Lojong is Tibetan, Tibetan word. It's a compound of Lo and Jongwa. Lo is mind. Sometimes, depending on context, can also be translated as intellect. But here, it's mind. So Lo. Zhongwa is to train. With the connotation of like training it, harnessing it, and even some sense of like taming it. Yeah? But literally, it is to train. And the notion of training is that, of course, what's implied in training is like, it's trainable, right? You don't go trying to train something that is not trainable. So, first of all, the mind. And you say, what kind of mind? Which mind are we talking about? Well, two senses of mind. The first, the most we have to start with is right now, this monkey mind. Right now, or you could say the activities of the mind. Earlier during the meditation session, I introduced the difference between the mind or the heart and activities of the heart. So you could say the first meaning of Lojong is the kind of training, the kind of practice whereby we learn how to tame, how to harness, how to control, in a way, the monkey mind. So the activities of the mind, activities of the heart. So that's the first definition of Lojong. And in that sense, then, all the teachings of the Buddha could be called Lojong. But Lojong also refers to a specific tradition, a specific pedigree within Tibetan Buddhism, which I will say a little bit in a few minutes. The second sense of Lo, in terms of mind and training that mind, is to train in a very specific type of mind or a very specific type of attitude. Mind, attitude, outlook, determination, you could call that. And here, the second sense is what we call the altruistic mind. And what is the altruistic mind? The altruistic mind is the mind that is other-centered rather than self-centered. The mind that is seeks to benefit others rather than seeks to benefit ourselves. So this is the second meaning of Lo in this compound of Lojong. And when you relate two of these together, first the monkey mind that needs to be trained, that needs to be harnessed, that needs to be controlled. And it's okay to control this monkey mind because the uncontrolled monkey mind is exhausting us. The uncontrolled monkey mind is bringing us a lot of stress, a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of suffering. And then when we are stressed, when we are distressed, when we are unhappy, and when we are suffering, guess what? We cause all the people around us to be stressed, to be distressed, to be unhappy, and to suffer along. It's quite natural. When we are unhappy, we, even without trying, we make people around us unhappy. So first, it is good. It is necessary to know how to tame this monkey mind. Monkey mind And it's another way of saying it's good to know how to tame our emotions that are out of control. Our emotions are dragging us around, that we are powerless in the face of our emotions. And so we need to get the upper hand of these emotions. So we train the mind. We harness the mind, the monkey mind. So that's, then when you bring this first type of mind to the second type, then what we're trying to do is, how do we most effectively train the monkey mind, which is to train it to become the altruistic mind, the second sense of Lo in the compound of Lojong, which is a very interesting understanding of what is at the root of this monkey mind. At the root of this monkey mind, according to the Lojong tradition, is self-cherishing, self-grasping, self-centeredness. Out of this fundamental self-centeredness, self-grasping, self-cherishing, then our emotions, what we call afflictive emotions, painful emotions, drag us around. And as we are dragged through all sorts of states of suffering, we cause all kinds of suffering to others as well. Then we become even more self-centered because we're suffering so much. We think, I want to get out of this. I really don't want this. But not knowing how to do that, ironically, we create more suffering, and then we become more self-centered. Then we grasp at ourselves even more. We hold on tightly even more to me. What is me? What is mine? My opinions, my judgment, my convenience, because we're suffering so much. In a way, it's very understandable, because we are so unhappy, because we're so unsatisfied. So then all we're capable of thinking is me, my concerns, my judgment, my opinions. So then we become more and more hardened and rigid. How do we undo this? We undo this by training this monkey mind from self-centeredness to other-centeredness, from self-cherishing to cherishing others, from self-concern to caring for others. So this is the second sense of Lo in the sense of Lojong. So this Lojong tradition there is a general sense of Lojong, as in all the teachings that the Buddha gave, fundamentally is for Lojong, for training the mind, and training the mind in this particular way. But then there's also a distinctive tradition, a distinctive pedigree, or more traditionally we use the language of lineage within Tibetan Buddhism, that is called Lojong. And that refers to a particular style of practice, a particular approach to training the monkey mind, training the mind that is right now caught up in self-grasping, self-cherishing, and then the attendant suffering that arises from there, to train it to become the altruistic mind, and in that way to become free from suffering, free from dissatisfaction, free from stress, and to become completely free through the altruistic mind. That particular tradition, that particular type of training, it is said originated with a 10th century figure, a Bengali master whom Tibetans know him as Atisha. His name was Dipankara, but then Tibetans know him as Atisha. So Atisha Dipankara was a Bengali master that lived in what is today we would call Bangladesh. He was a prince destined to succeed his father, but instead of going that route, like Buddha Shakyamuni, he decided to pursue the spiritual path. Then he went to famous Buddhist institutions of learning, great universities, great Buddhist universities of his time. Somapuri, I think Somapura is one of those places that is in again modern day Bangladesh. And then later I think he also went to Nalanda, which is in what's we call India today, and he trained in those areas. Then it is said that when he heard that there was a great master in what is today Indonesia and probably what is today Sumatra, when he heard that there was, and at that time, Buddhism was all over Southeast Asia, and so then in Southeast Asia, in Sumatra, there was a thriving Buddhist community. So when Atisha heard that there was a very special master that specialized in training the monkey mind to become the altruistic mind of the bodhisattvas, and when he heard of the reputation of this great master called Sir Lingpa in Tibetan, which simply means, the man from the Golden Islands, and the Golden Islands refer to this area in Southeast Asia. So then his name, the teacher's name, was Dhammakirti. And so then Atisha traveled by sea, took this dangerous journey to Sir Ling, to the Golden Islands in Southeast Asia, and studied with this master, I think for like 13 years. After that, he went back to India, to the South Asian continent, and then later in his life, he went to Tibet, invited by the kings of Western Tibet to help re-establish Buddhism in Tibet. There was an interruption of Buddhism, transmission of Buddhism and practice of Buddhism for over 100 years prior to that. And so then Atisha went to Tibet and spearheaded this second kind of revival of Buddhism in India. And so it is said that it was Atisha who taught this tradition that eventually became known as Lojong. However, according to tradition, it is said that Atisha gave these Lojong teachings to his closest disciples and told them, there is no need right now to teach this particular tradition publicly. Instead, for public teachings, you should teach what's known as stages of the path, or Lamrim in Tibetan. And so it was only, I think, 3 or 4 generations after Atisha, and particularly with this master called Geshe Chekawa, that the Lojong teachings became public, was taught publicly instead of being taught privately from teacher to student. Then now it's being taught widely and publicly. So from the time of Geshe Chekawa, who is also the author of the text that I'm going to anchor this series on Lojong, I'm going to anchor it on this very famous composition known as the Mahayana Lojong in 7 points. So there are translations of this text that is been translated so many times into English by so many translators. The particular translation that I'm using, it's available for free download at tibetanspirit.com. So if you go to this website, tibetanspirit.com, and you do a search there for Mahayana Lojong, so if someone out there watching now knows exactly how to spell this, I think it will help others if you type this. Or if you know the specific link to Tibetan Spirit, that people can just click and to go there and download this text, please help me out and type this and share this with others in the comments. So that particular translation is one that I have worked on myself. I'm not a Tibetologist by any means, but then because of my personal interest in Lojong, for the last number of 5-10 years, I've come back again and again to this particular text, and so I have, in my own way, kind of produced a translation that I'm going to be anchoring our series on. And so that text, the Mahayana Lojong in 7 points, was composed by this individual called Geshe Chekawa. Geshe Chekawa is a few generations away from Atisha. So Geshe Chekawa, what he did was he basically pulled together many of these what we would call slogans, these almost like one-liners. And some of these one-liners are actually 2 lines. Yeah, so he brought together these one-liners, which are probably from what's known as the scattered sayings of Atisha. I think a 12th century master of Atisha's tradition, which is called the Kadampa lineage, he wrote, I remember reading somewhere, that Atisha's teachings can be divided into 4 major categories. One category he called the scattered sayings, meaning like different sayings that Atisha famously gave to different individuals when these individuals came to him with a particular issue or particular problem in their meditation, in their Dharma practice. Then Atisha uttered these kind of very memorable statements. And so probably from these scattered statements, Geshe Chekawa pulled them together and organized them into 7 points. So these 7 points are the basis of what we're going to do in this study of the Lojong tradition. So I'm going to pause here and see if you have any questions that you might have. And some of you, have already heard this many times. And if you have already heard this many times, you can even instigate a question. So it's not necessarily you don't know the answer, but if from your own experience you think it will be helpful for others to hear this, please type that question. Then you're helping me out. I probably have left something out up until this point. So you can help me out and help everybody else out by typing and pretending that you are asking this question. So please do that as I look for something else that I want to talk about. So I'll pause my talking a little bit and give some of you a chance to ask some questions. thank you. Many people have shared the link. Wonderful. Any questions or pretend questions? Or request, can you please elaborate, blah, 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 something like that. Or can you tell the story of Atisha, or, so here there is a question. This is regarding the meditation. So the question is, do we have to attend the breathing in any particular area of the body? So what I understand is basically this question comes from in different instructions given. This meditation on counting breath is very common across many different Buddhist traditions. And so depending on different teachers, they're going to emphasize during this counting, some teachers will say, or some teachers based on some traditions will say, you just mentally count. No need to really focus on a particular part of your body. Some teachers will say, oh, you focus on the sensation of the breath going in and out of your nostril, breathing with your nose rather than your mouth, breathing in and out, and this area. Some traditions will say that. And really the tradition that says this, that you should focus on the sensation here, is basically anchoring this the source of this this emphasis is in the Anapanasati Sutta, where in that discourse that the Buddha gave, teaching the watching of the breath, it says, bring your attention to the fore, to the front, and then it's interpreted as here. Then some other tradition will say, focus on the arising and the ceasing of breath, specifically in the rising and the falling of the belly. So as you breathe in, right, if you put your hand on your belly, as you breathe in, you see how your belly expands, and as you breathe out, your belly goes back in. So in the Burmese tradition, the Mahasi method tends to emphasize the rising and the falling of the belly as you breathe in and out. Here in the Lojong teachings, in the earliest Lojong commentary by Geshe Chekawa's student, Se means son, Chilbupa, Se Chilbu. In his commentary, which is the oldest commentary, as far as I know, that we have of this text by Geshe Chekawa, he doesn't say focus on the sensation here, or as the air enters in and out. He doesn't say focus on the belly. He doesn't say focus on the whole body, expanding and contracting. So, in other words, from within the Lojong commentaries, no emphasis on focusing on any part of the body, but instead to use the counting as a way to gather in the mind. So the counting is simply a method to gather in the mind so that the mind is not scattered. With the understanding that when the mind and when our attention is gathered in, we become happier, we become more content, and also we begin to discover these very satisfying aspects of our mind, which right now we are squandering away by being so distracted. So there's a question. There's a comment I'm echoing. It might be because I am looking at, I have the feed, So unfortunately, there's no way to see these comments if I don't look at this. So there's a question about how to exactly count, and there's a question about how long we should meditate. Okay, so let me go away from looking at this live on the iPad, and that will minimize the echo. Okay, so echoing, not my side. Okay. How often should we meditate? That's entirely up to you. But what I can say is that especially when you're just starting, the instructions say do it in short increments. Maybe throughout the day, do several times throughout the day. But each time, limit yourself to 5-10 minutes. Because it's better to do it that way. You don't want to exhaust yourself. You don't want it to become a chore. You want it to be something that you look forward to. And also at the beginning, it's easier to say, I am determined for 10 minutes now to be focused on this and to be alert. Like my, having to climb the ladder, I shared with you earlier. Like I don't like heights, so there was a situation, in case you just joined us, where I had to climb the ladder to go, quote-unquote, rescue 2 friends that is helping me, that is stuck on the higher part of my roof. And so that time, I just had to be completely, because I don't like heights, I don't like climbing, but no choice, But there, I became so alert and alive in a nice way. In fact, there was no fear, because in a way I channel all my fear to needing to be determined about this getting up, climbing up. And so likewise, when we start meditation, we want to make a determination and say, for the next 10 minutes, I want to be present to what I am doing here and be determined. So short sessions, spread out throughout a day, 5-10 minutes, several times a day. Then to the question of how to count. So again, the general instructions says, the general instructions from the Lojong tradition, it says count to 21. So inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, inhale, exhale 3, all the way to 21. But I've shared my own experience, which is to say that I have found that, again, when you are just starting this, trying to count from 1 to 21 is actually quite challenging. Often, somewhere around 11, you kind of go off somewhere else. You're like 11, inhale, exhale 10, inhale, exhale 11, inhale, exhale, and suddenly you go, wait, was that 11 or was that 14? And then you've gone off. So I have found, and when I've shared this particular technique with others, they've found useful, and you can try it, and then you can tell me if it's useful or not, which is to divide the 21 into 3 sets. So each set is 7, and then to give a little bit more to it, right? This is how I do it. I would go inhale 1, exhale 1, inhale 1, exhale 2, inhale 3, inhale 1, exhale 3. So basically 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, all the way to 7. Then the next second set, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, up to 2, 7, then 3, 1, 3, 2, up to 7. And in this way, you complete 21, dividing it into 3 sets. And also I said, if you lose count in the middle of like 2, 3, and then you're like, wait, was that 2, 3 or was that 2, 4? Then go back to 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, up to 7. These are, and it's important to remember this. All that I'm saying, everything that I've said, right, especially in terms of the meditation techniques, the do's and the don'ts, remember that they are simply suggestions. Now, they're not random suggestions. They're suggestions based on experience, my own experience, and the experience and the wisdom of the lineage. But nonetheless, they are suggestions. And you should take them in the spirit that they are given, which is they are suggestions based on experience, and you take the suggestions and to see if those suggestions are going to match with your experience. Because at the end of the day, you have to take ownership of this process. You have to take ownership of this training. And you have to be true to your own experience. So have confidence. I hope you can develop confidence that the instructions given are based on a lineage of individuals who have applied these teachings, and it has come down to us now. So there is tremendous wisdom there. But still, this wisdom, it's not commandment of some all-powerful God that demands our loyalty, demands our obedience. It's not given in that spirit. It's given in the spirit of the collective wisdom of individuals who have sincerely applied this. But at the end of the day, that wisdom can only be useful if it helps you, if it enhances your experience of what you are working on. So you also need to respect your own experience as much as you revere the wisdom of the lineage. Bring these two together, then our meditation practice can become fruitful. And when I say fruitful, what do I mean? What I mean is our ability to attend to our inner life becomes fruitful. Meditation is not so that, we transcend this world, we become, super meditators or anything like that. Right? It is, at the end of the day, simply saying, as much as we are spending time managing the external world, managing the physical conditions that we are living in, we also need to learn how to manage our inner life. We have external aspects to our existence. We also have inner aspects to our existence. But think about how much time and resources we have already spent in this lifetime making sure that the external reality is more comfortable, more agreeable, more happy, more conducive to what we want, what we like. Think about how much time and resources we have already spent in this life managing the outside. And how little time we have spent managing the inside. When you look at that, that imbalance, is it a surprise that even after all these years, I don't care whether you are 20 now, or you are 200, or 79, it doesn't matter how old, how young. I can guarantee 90% of our resources and time we have spent to try to manage the external reality. And barely have we done anything to manage our inner reality. Now, is it a surprise that even now we are still unsatisfied, we are still stressed, we are still unhappy, we are still confused as to how to achieve the happiness that we truly want? No surprise at all. The Buddha says, in fact, everything is determined by the mind. Everything is determined by our inner world. Now, you say, oh no, I don't know. I don't think I can believe that. Then, okay, no need to believe the Buddha 100%. But at the very least, right? Based on what the Buddha has said, you need to think, well, is it reasonable to think that there's the external and there's the internal? And if there is the external and there's the internal, is it reasonable to say at least 50% of external, of our efforts and our resources should be spent on the external, and 50% should be spent on the internal? Is it reasonable to say that? You think about it. I think it is absolutely reasonable. Even if the Buddha says actually 100% should be spent managing the internal. But let's just say 50%. Then we ask ourselves, you ask yourself, on a given day, on a given week, on a given month, on a given year, are we dividing our time and resources by 50% to manage better the external world and 50% to manage better our inner world, our mind? Training this mind, Lojong. Ask yourself, have we done that? I can tell you, myself, far from that. At most, at any given day, maybe 20% of my day is spent managing, taking care of the inner aspects. But 80% of the time is spent, at least 80%, still spent managing the outside. So, meditation is simply a way to begin to manage our inner world. With the understanding that when we know how to manage our inner world, then the external world becomes easier to manage. Then when the inner and the outer meet at the right place, then we can be happier, we can be freer, more free, more happy. So let's see again, if there is other comments. I need to look for it now. I've lost the particular screen. Let me go look for it. Bear with me. Comments? Okay, no comments. There is a question. Yes. The first instruction in the text says, first train in the preliminaries. Can you explain which preliminaries? That is for the rest of this series. Tonight, we're not actually looking at the text first. But I wanted you to have the text first, and you can familiarize yourself with the text, but we are going to start with that at the next time that we meet. But I want to briefly give you an overview of these 7 points. And I want to make a few comments about these 7 points. So what are the 7 points? Okay, the 7 points in this text, and the details for each of the points are different. If you have the text, you can see immediately. For example, point number 1, only has 1 line, whereas point number 6 and point number 7, many one-liners. Point number 2, there are 10 lines. In actually some versions, there are only 8 lines. There are very variant texts called the 7-point mind training of Geshe Chekawa, the Mahayana Lojong in 7 points by Geshe Chekawa. Even that, there are actually different versions circulating historically. But the version that I'm using, the 2nd point, has 10 lines. And then so these 7 points, they are elaborated with varying lengths. So what are the 7 points? The first point is presentation of the preliminaries. Second point is training in the 2 awakening minds, which is the main practice in Lojong, and training in the 2 awakening minds, or training in the 2, the technical term, bodhicittas, bodhicitta. Third, taking adversities onto the path of awakening. Fourth, presentation of a lifetime's practice in summary. So there it will say, in summary, if we talk about a whole lifetime of practice, there are 5 things that we should rely on. And then at the time of death, it's the same 5 things, but in the context of dying. So that's the point number 4. Point number 5 is called the measure of having trained the mind, which means, like, if you want to know how well your Lojong practice is going, you look at what is discussed in point number 5. Then point number 6 is the commitments of Lojong. And the 7th is the precepts, the specific guidances, the specific precepts of training for Lojong. So these are the 7 points. So what I want to say in maybe making a case for why I am offering this series is, I want to say that, and I will hopefully convince you if you decide to join this series and come back again and again. What I want to say is that many teachers are teaching this Lojong in 7 points, and they have really wonderful things to say, particularly the most famous, I think, in the West, that have really popularized Lojong. And then part of Lojong is the practice of Tonglen. So I'm sure some of you have heard of Tonglen. Tonglen meditation is actually taught in this Lojong in 7 points. And Tonglen is also taught in the Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva, the Bodhicayavattara, this text. But in Mahayana Lojong in 7 points, Tonglen is taught in point number 2 as one of the Bodhicittas training. So Pema Chodron has really brought this practice and make it so well known and so popular. So even people who are not Buddhists or do not know anything else about Buddhism, even like at yoga studios, I've seen people are practicing Tonglen and practicing this Tonglen meditation. So many teachers are teaching this text called the Mahayana Lojong in 7 points. They have really amazing things, wonderful things. There's so many books on this topic. But what a case that I want to make here is that where I am going to emphasize is something that for the most part, I think most teachers have not emphasized, which is an emphasis on paying attention to the structure of this text. I want to make a case that the structure of this text is really very important in terms of seeing the full power, the full potential of this system of training. So rather than looking at this text as, say, the 59 slogans, if you actually count, right, all the individual points within the 7 points, or all the lines given in the 7 points, I think you can come up with about 59, depending on the versions of the text, 59 one-liners. So sometimes this has been called the Lojong slogans. There is, benefit, and I'm sure, in just reading these 59 slogans, or even I think they have made them into these cards, right? That you can just randomly pick one card out and you contemplate and you think about that. I'm sure that is very helpful and that's very useful. But I also want to say that Geshe Chekawa did not say Lojong in 59 slogans. Geshe Chekawa actually said Lojong in 7 points. And so in this series, I want to emphasize the importance of paying attention to these 7 points. And in fact, where I'm going to start is actually not starting with point number 1. Where I'm going to start when I start teaching this text, start sharing this text with all of you, I'm going to start with point number 5. And next time when we meet, you will see why I'm starting with point number 5. And I will see if I'm able to convince you that there is a good reason to start the whole our whole effort in learning about this tradition and in incorporating it into our lives, especially right now with all of this conventional reality turned upside down. There is nothing that I can think of that is the more helpful than this Lojong tradition. But when we start looking at this text, I'm going to start with point number 5. So I think tonight we're going to end here, and let's see if there's any last questions before we end this session. So I'm going to pause a little bit, that way I can rest my voice as well, and see if you have any final comments or questions before we end. I want to thank all of you for participating. I am still, quite influenced by, what we call the 8 worldly concerns, praise, blame, fame, defame, and so especially praise and blame, So I want to thank you, when I see that, there's so many of you watching, or you're leaving comments, that inspires me. And also, this opportunity to share this with you helps me tremendously because each time I have to share this, I have to talk about this, I have to do homework, So I go back and I look at the commentaries, I do my research, so to say, and then I do the practice myself, and then as I'm sharing with you, things will come through. I'm not claiming, divine inspiration, but it is this, like, I think our innate wisdom comes through, and then I will hopefully have insights that I myself never really thought about. So this is an opportunity for me to grow further in understanding the profundity of this Lojong tradition. So having you join me in this is very helpful. And so then if you find this helpful, please share this particular video with other people that you know who might find this to be useful. And this way, it will, again, like I say, I still like to be praised, like to know that I'm helping others. So these are things that the Lojong tradition say, I should purify. But meanwhile, Lojong tradition also says, in fact, you can use self-grasping to transcend self-grasping. So I'm going to make use of all this praise to transcend a concern for praise and a fear of blame. So it's good. If we know how to train according to Lojong, even adversities can be turned on their own heads and become the path to awakening. So my intention, actually, so just to tell you this, is that this is not only going to be once a week. My intention is to actually start doing this more frequently, but I have not exactly figured out my schedule yet. So please come back to Urban Dharma North Carolina Facebook page for updates to tell you when is the next time I'm going to be teaching again on this topic. Beyond doing the teachings, I also have some idea of scheduling like a more regular period of practicing together, especially when we have looked at the second point. The second point is where the main meditation practice is taught. In fact, in this Lojong, Mahayana Lojong in 7 Points by Geshe Chekawa, he teaches the preliminary meditation. So the question of what are the preliminaries? One of the preliminaries is what we did at the beginning of this evening's program, which is the training in meditating by counting breath to 21. So that is one important preliminary. So that's the preliminary formal meditation. Then the main formal meditation, there is the meditating on absolute bodhicitta and meditating on relative bodhicitta. Meditating on relative bodhicitta is the Tonglen practice that many of you have heard or are already doing. Then there is also, according to this instruction, Tonglen is the formal meditation on relative bodhicitta, but there is also the formal meditation on absolute bodhicitta. So especially when we come to the second point, from that point on, it is good, I think, to have a more regular schedule for practice. So maybe 3 times a week. Short, half an hour each time. So my intention is to also provide that for you, if it is helpful, to provide that support each day, not each day, but every other day maybe. For half an hour, we will meet on using this platform, this format, and then I will give instructions or reminders to help us with the formal meditation sessions. So homework, meanwhile, between now and the next time we meet, is try to do this counting of 21 meditation, because this is the foundation, this is the preliminary in order to do the main meditation of this Lojong in 7 points. So thank you for taking time to join in this program. This video remains available on this page, the Urban Dharma page. So if you want to look for this video again, you can go to the page itself and scroll and look for it. Or the other way, an easier way, is that when you go to the Urban Dharma Facebook page, which is where you are right now, but when you go there again, you will find a tab that says videos. If you click that, you will find all the videos that we have ever live streamed, all the live streams that we have ever done. It's all under this tab. If you click videos, you'll see all of them. So that's an easier way to look for things. Facebook doesn't make it so easy to look for things, but if you know where to click and where to look, actually it becomes easier. So there is a tab called videos. You can click there and then you can see this teaching again. And that's also where you can share with others this particular video for tonight. So have a good evening or morning, depending on which part of the world you are watching from. Especially right now, please, your first responsibility is to take good care of yourself. And when you know how to take good care of yourself in the intelligent way, in the skillful way, then you can also take care of others. Then taking care of self and taking care of others becomes simultaneous. But first, learn how to be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself and take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. Have a good evening.